Hello everyone, this is Irfan Rasool and I welcome you back to my channel Irfan Rasool the John Ball. Today we are going to talk about part 2 lecture of my last lecture about verbs, and I explained what the verbs are and I talked about its types. If you remember, I talked about three types of the verbs, main three types. Number one was the action verbs or the main verbs. Number two were the auxiliary verbs or the helping verbs. And number three was the modal auxiliary, right? So today we are going to talk about the main verbs or action verbs. So you see, when we talk about the main verbs, we should know, in fact we know it because I showed it in my last video, part 1. One of the type that I mentioned was the transitive verb. Transitive verb, very simple, most of the people know this. Since we came to know about the object in the part 1 lecture, so it's very easy for us to understand the types of the main verb. See, it's a verb. Before I get to explain this, I would like to put an example in front of you. You see this? Oh, she likes. I won't. See, this is the subject, or you can say the pronoun. This is also the subject, you can see the pronoun, and this is a verb. And this is a verb, right? This is verb, this is verb. We have other examples, like for example, birds fly or boys play. Again, we have here the same subjects and verbs, right? But if you see, there's a strange case in these 4 sentences. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4. The case is all the verbs have a similar thing, that they end with the verbs, right? These are 2-word sentences, all 4. And you see, every sentence from 1 to 4 ends with the verb. So nowhere an injustice is done. For example, they are all equal. But if you see, the senses are not equal in all the 4 sentences. Look at the first sentence. She likes. She likes what? That seems to be incomplete in sense, isn't it? I can't say somebody she likes and then leave. So I left something important to say, right? You see the other one, I want. What do you want? It's not clear, right? But if you see the third and fourth, birds fly. The message is clear. The sentence is easy to understand. Yeah, birds fly. That's good. And then the fourth one, boys play. Clear in meaning. Boys play. What else do we need to complete this? See, what I mean to say is that there are some verbs that can complete their sentences on their own, like 3 and 4. And they don't need any object. Now, see, the word object starts to come because we talked about the object in the part 1 lecture. See, they don't need any object. Yeah, they may need some words. Birds fly in the sky. But remember, this is not the object because I cleared it in my part 1 lecture. That's why I talked about the object deeply, the direct object and the indirect object. I talked about the object is something that tells us about the verb what or who, for what or for whom, or to what or to whom. But this is saying nothing. So you see, this is not the object. But if you see here, she likes what? I need to say what? She likes English, right? I want coffee. See, the above 2 sentences, number 1 and number 2, they need an object. They need something, important thing, right? To complete their sentences. And this is the object, we know it. When we say something like what, she likes what, this. She wants what, coffee. So these are objects. And if you remember, these are the direct objects, right? So, but they don't need objects. This is quite clear. Without this, with this, it's okay. And if we write this, remember, this is not an object. Boys play at home in quarantine, and this is not an object because this is not saying about action. What action? Something like that. No. So there are 2 types of verbs. One can complete their sentences without any requirement of the object, and the other one, they need an object to complete their sentences. The one that I talked in the first and 2, they are actually transitive verbs because they need an object. You can't write them without the objects. They need an object to complete their senses. They are known as transitive verbs. And the other one, the like the fly and play, they are intransitive verbs. Why? Because in means not. They do not require. In that language, it means not. Intransitive means those verbs, they don't need objects to complete their senses. So it's pretty clear, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. See, I'm going to write it for you. So transitive verbs are the verbs that need an object, that need an object as I show you, and intransitive verbs they don't need an object. Pretty simple. They don't need an object. And you can just write the examples like, want, and here like play, or you can say sing, or you can say fly, many other examples. So this was transitive and intransitive. Let's talk about the ditransitive verb. Now look at this example. I gave him. Now this is the subject, this is the verb, and this is the object, right? But still this is not completing the sense. If you just see, it's pretty simple. I gave him. But what do you give him? That's the question. If you see somebody, I gave him, yeah, I gave him. But that looks to be pretty incomplete, pretty awkward. What do you give him? That's the question. So despite it as an object, yet it doesn't complete its sense. So it needs the other object. That's why we call this ditransitive, because it needs two objects, right? I gave him a gift. Let's see, two objects. Now there is one a direct object and the other one is the indirect object. Can you please tell me what is a direct object here? If you say the right one, you're right. This is the direct object because it says what? I told you before, I'll write it now. If any word says about the verb what or who, it's a direct object. But if it says to what or to who, to whom, or for what or for whom, these two are indirect objects and these two are direct objects. So see, I gave him what? What do you gave? That's the gift. That's why it's a direct object. And to whom? I gave it to him. It's an indirect object. So we've got two objects in the sentence, so that's why it's known as ditransitive, right? Now let's talk about the other one. The next one, that is ambitransitive. It's very simple to understand. Doesn't need too much of the, cramming or stressing. See, ambitransitive is pretty simple. Sometimes there are verbs, sometimes the same verbs need an object to complete their sentences, but sometimes they don't need. For example, let's see. I understand. I understand. You understand what? So it needs an object. I understand your point. So this is an object. You understand what? Because it's talking about what? I just keep this writing here because so that every time you come to know what the object is, what and who. And to what, to whom, for what, for whom, right? So I understand what. So this is the direct object, right? And you see, sometimes I don't need to put an object after this. See? I understand very nicely or very fast. You see, this time don't say this is an object. it's written over here. It doesn't say I understand why. It doesn't say that I understand who. It doesn't say to what, to whom, for what, for whom. No. So as if you remember my part 1 lecture, I said it there, that not every word that comes after the verb is an object. Only these few conditions are there. If these conditions arise in the sentence, or they tell something about the verb like this, that's an object. So here we don't have an object. So sometimes it needs an object, sometimes it doesn't complete the sense without the object, and sometimes it completes the sense without the object. So it's a dual case, opposite case, so we call this ambitransitive, right? Then we have the other one. We talked about transitive, we talked about intransitive, we talked about ditransitive, we talked about ambitransitive, and we will talk about the other one, that is causative one. Somebody's knocking, so I'll stop my video. I'll talk about this in the next lecture, inshallah. Till then, goodbye. Assalamu alaikum.